Hello A&P students, this is Mr. Becker here to talk about the structures of the spinal cord. One of the things to note about the nervous system is the fact that neurologists tend to use the terms dorsal and ventral for the nervous system. And so when we use the term dorsal, we're talking posterior, and when we use the term ventral, we're talking anterior. So I will use the dorsal ventral nomenclature because that's the most common in neurology. So what we have here is our spinal cord cut in cross-section to show off several of the levels of the spinal cord. And you can see the spinal cord is composed of two primary types of matter. We have an inner layer of gray matter, which is primarily composed of the cell bodies of neurons and unmyelinated axons. And then we have white matter, which is composed primarily of myelinated axons. This spinal cord is split into a right and a left half and is joined together at a structure known as the commissure. The commissure has two component parts to it, unmyelinated gray commissure and then a myelinated white commissure that will join left to right. Splitting the rest of the spinal cord, on the anterior side here we have the ventral median fissure, and on the posterior side we have the dorsal median sulcus. All right, sulci are more shallow than fissures are, and this is represented fairly well on our model. You can see the fissures much larger and much deeper. The gray matter is composed of three horns of material: dorsal, lateral, and ventral horns. The dorsal horn is composed primarily of the cell bodies of interneurons that are going to be synapsing with the sensory neurons' axons coming in from the dorsal roots. The lateral horn contains the cell bodies for autonomic motor neurons, and the ventral horn here contains the cell bodies for somatic motor neurons. Surrounding the gray matter, we have the white matter, which is split into funiculi. The funiculi are going to carry very specific sets of information based on which funiculus we're looking at. Between the dorsal horn and the dorsal median sulcus here, we have the dorsal funiculus, which is going to be carrying sensory information up the spinal cord. Between the dorsal horn and the ventral horn here, we have the lateral funiculus, which carries both motor and sensory information. Motor information is primarily on the anterior, and sensory information is primarily on the posterior side of the funiculus. And then finally, we have between the ventral horn and the ventral median fissure, the ventral funiculus, which carries primarily motor information down the spinal cord. Coming into the spinal cord, on the front and the back, we have the roots. On the back side here, we have the dorsal roots of the spinal cord. And notice the structure. This is the dorsal root ganglion. It contains the cell bodies of the sensory neurons that are going to be bringing sensory information into the spinal cord. And then on the anterior side here, we have the ventral roots. All right, the dorsal roots carry only sensory information. The ventral roots carry only motor information out of the spinal cord. And then right here, where the two roots join together, this is the sensu stricto spinal nerve. It's the only point where all of the axons of the spinal cord and spinal nerve are going to come together at this level before they begin branching. Once we pass through the sensu stricto area, we branch to form four rami. The posterior ramus here is going to the deep back muscles. The anterior ramus goes to pretty much everywhere else in the body. And then these two rami are called the rami communicantes, and they go to the sympathetic trunk. So these are the structures of the spinal cord.